Hello there, everybody, and welcome back to another predictions and speculation for Andor. We are talking about episode 9 this week. We just reviewed episode 8, so if you haven't checked that video out, check that video out, as well as our review for Tales of the Jedi, which also came out this week. Check that video out. And if you haven't seen the latest Star Wars Lads Halloween special, please hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for continued Star Wars Lads content. We're on the road to 1,000 subs, so all of your subscriptions matter. If you're watching this video and haven't subbed, please do so to really help us out, help us continue to give you guys great content. And really, it's the best way to show us that you enjoy our content and want to see more. Comment below, let us know what your predictions are for episode 9 of Andor as well. So like we've been doing the last couple weeks, we'll probably divide this predictions and speculation into 3 parts because there are 3 central storylines going on in the show right now. There's Cassian's storyline, there's the ISB storyline, and then there's the Luthen and Mothma storyline. So let's start with the Cassian storyline. It was probably about 50%, 40% of last episode. Sanak, what are your thoughts on what's going to happen with Cassian and the whole prison section here in episode 9?
I think what we're going to see in the next part of the Cassian story is a little bit more of like the psyche of a lot of these characters. We saw at the end there, the guy kind of just, they called it railing, where he just went onto the red floor, not even the white floor. And we saw what the white floor does. It just kind of shocks you, puts you in place. It's like a kind of vibrating, shocking sort of experience. But they don't show us what happened with the red one, which I assume means that this man was severely cooked, like well done meat. So it's pretty unfortunate what happened there. But I think maybe we'll get a bit more of a time jump. It was a pretty interesting thing to place Cassian's story at the end of it, like after 30 days of becoming used to it. And I mean, I could potentially see him kind of start dealing a little bit more with like Melshi, kind of to see if there's like maybe some rebel sympathizers, because it was pretty curious that this is the guy who's like, look, it doesn't matter, like don't look at that number, it's just going to be what it is, where everyone else is like, oh, you must clearly know what's going on, you're out there, like what are the rebels doing, yada yada yada. So it would seem like the guy you most medium expect in the room, who kind of doesn't care, might be the guy who's actually the real rebel here. He might be the guy who can eventually bust him out. Maybe he finally gets tired of being used to this sort of game that all these different like areas play for best labor crew and all that. Like at some point, I think he'll snap out of it. Like he's become so used to it and accustomed to it by the end. But this is Cassian. He can't stay still. At some point, he's going to want to cause some havoc. I'm not sure where Andy Serkis's character will go. I feel like he's just going to be like the enemy that Cassian has to deal with, because his term is coming pretty closely to an end. He only wants to play by the rules. This is his place of power. So I can see him be even more of an antagonist directly against Cassian, especially if Cassian starts kind of breaking free from this being like accustomed to the system. But yeah, I think at the end of the day, the biggest thing we'll see is maybe he follows up with whoever's doing these hand signals, sees whoever's talking in their little row, find out if he can maybe interpret some of the sign language or pick up on some clues, and then or just directly confront whoever's in his block. But I don't know. I think that's kind of where my ideas are with the storylines.
I agree. I think the rebel angle, the way that so many people are involved with the rebellion, and Cassian both doesn't know and doesn't really want to care. He's trying to distance himself from the activity that he was involved with. I think that's going to build up, though, because he is highly curious in what they're going to do. I think that old guy's a goner in his crew. I think one of the people in his crew is going to get killed. I think something's going to happen with Andy Serkis, with the guards, and with them. There's going to be kind of your more traditional prison story, kind of a nice guy gets killed and everybody is upset, and maybe because Andy Serkis is caught in between guards and the prisoners, he's almost ready to get out, and he's basically a guard himself, but he's still got that prisoner loyalty side. Could we see a flip in him? Could we see him actually get killed by one of the rebel people in the prison, or would he actually fight for them and help them out? I think it's going to go one of those ways, but I do think somebody in Cassian's little group is going to get killed, and there's going to be some type of spark next episode, I do think will be a lot of talking and a lot of like research and Cassian doing things to try to figure out more about the communications within the prison itself. And I do think it's kind of end with a bigger bang. I think Bix being captured was kind of the big bang of this end episode. It was kind of the climax of this last episode. I think something will happen with Cassian that kind of pushes it forward into the ultimate prison break that might unite a lot of our characters back onto this place especially as Dedra continues to look for Cassian. When's she going to find out that they already have Cassian? So I think that's a nice transition for us to get into the ISB section of this predictions. We've got Dedra and Ferrix, and we can also include Bix as well as Cassian's mom and all the Rebel on Ferrix storyline in this section. Sanak, what do you think was going to happen next episode with the ISB and with Ferrix?
I think the biggest thing is that we're going to have the interrogation kind of be the core part of the storyline. And then we'll see like a Brasso in his perspective. We'll try to see if a pack is freed, what he'll say to like Marva. Marva at this point is like trying to even like flood the hotels and stuff. She's trying to be a rebel, but she's like an old lady, like waving her walking stick and making noise more than anything substantial. Or maybe that's part of her act. Brasso was one of the most interesting characters in the premiere episodes for me because there wasn't much there with him, but it seems like he might know even more than he's letting on. Like he knows how to keep his cards close to his chest. So I'd be pretty interested to see like to what effect he's supported like a Marva or supported Bix in Pack and all their rebel stuff. But the biggest group outside of the interrogation of rebels will be Vel and Cinta. I'm pretty surprised that Cinta just got off Aldani pretty quickly. I mean, I guess she's great at her job or whatever, but Vel, especially since the last episode, like, yeah, she's been tasked with like, okay, you need to hunt down Cassian. I forget what Luthen is saying. Do what I'm saying about Clea. This is part of the job. But now that they've met up, her weakness is Cinta. I think they're really leaning that this is a relationship, that this is something that was maybe born out of this subterfuge and war, but like, and how does that affect these relationships, especially with these rebels that we see in comic books and all that? We only see little tinges of that here before like a full structure is established. It's so obvious that it's so heavy and burdensome, and it brings people who connect in that moment, but they're dramatically different people. So I really liked how they explore that relationship without just falling into like, oh, I missed you, like, oh, like let's take some breaks. It's like, no, it's hard for everyone, and we're not an exactly connective piece as they seem to be on Aldani. As far as the interrogation goes, I don't know. I think that's something that we'll see some like iconic lines from Dedra or whatever. I'm liking that we're getting some stuff with Ferrix finally be built up. But I feel like everything with the interrogation is just going to be cross-cut with stuff going on Ferrix with the growing rebellion sympathy. Maybe we'll see some people start fighting some stormtroopers and the law get enforced. Stuff like that. I don't think the interrogation itself will reveal too much in the way that Dedra wants, but maybe Bix slips up, and that's paralleled with some scenes that we see on Ferrix.
I think there's definitely going to be some minor revolts. I think we're going to see some action. I think Ferrix is going to be the center stage for most of the action of the next episode. I think there'll be some groups that are protesting, some shots that are fired, your typical like Boston Tea Party type thing of here we go. We're accidentally starting the revolution here. And I think that's going to kind of kickstart what's going to mostly be a crazy episode 10. But Bix, I think, will have an interesting conversation with Dedra. Dedra, I think, will be continually digging throughout this episode as well. I think she'll have put most of it all together by the end of the episode, and she'll at least know that they have Cassian at the prison by the end of the episode. I think that will be one of the cliffhangers as well. One of the interesting things that they threw out there was Cynthia saying to Vel that maybe she can pretend to be a rich girl running away from her family. That's obviously seems to be a dig at Vel's probably former life before she joined up with Luthen. Maybe we get a bit more soul searching with Vel, maybe a little more backstory on how she met up with Luthen. Maybe she connects with Luthen in the next episode. She's going off to kind of be reconnaissance elsewhere while Synthia stays and could possibly die as part of this little revolt. I could see that sparking some fire for Vel and then subsequently for Luthen. All of that I think will connect nicely, but I do think Ferrix will be kind of one of the more center stages of the next episode. I think it will dominate the majority of the runtime out of the three stories, and I think it will be building towards this fire that is going to explode in the finale. But ultimately, it's going to end with Dedra finding out that Cassian is already in custody, and they're going to go try to get him back. Maybe that prison break is looming or starting towards the end of the episode, and there's a reason they can't directly get in touch with the prison. There'll be something like that, but I'm looking forward to that storyline nonetheless next episode. So finally, we have to talk about Luthen and Mon Mothma, or the politics side of this whole thing. Sanak, what are your thoughts on what Luthen's role might be in the next episode, or Mon Mothma's, or both?
I would say if we kind of split the difference these last two episodes with whoever has like the majority of the screen time here, I think they're going to be both fairly minor. I think for Luthen, we're going to start going into like the personal cracking. Like he's already had the Saw Gerrera stuff kind of fail. Maybe he deals with someone else, another rebel that we don't know about, like another. Maybe he does something with the Path. That'd be a very cool connection with like Kenobi and see if like he can help out these relatively peaceful group of people compared to the partisans. I'd like to see him kind of explore, kind of tag all these other rebel groups that are folded into what we know as like a Red Group and all that stuff in A New Hope and Rogue One. I think while he's doing all that stuff, he'll still be like, I think, yeah, we're going to see a little bit more revelations about his character too, why he feels like he's a coward, why he feels like he's doing these things. Maybe some backstory about who he was in the Republic 10 years ago compared to who he is now, what caused him to finally be doing these things, and what's causing him to crack at this time, at this point in time. And then the bigger thing will be for Mon Mothma. And I think for her, again, it'll be personal stuff. I think that $400,000, like, sure, we'll maybe see some payoff there. Maybe her friend gets killed or in trouble or something. Maybe he's forced to disconnect. Maybe we see a little bit more of a personal angle with his daughter, with her daughter and her husband. I'd like to see her husband openly, just instead of just like be like bored and like, okay, whatever, you've played your games around me. Like, I'd like him to be openly antagonistic. I think they built up enough tension that now even he needs to start saying some stuff. And then the little cherry on top would be her daughter saying like, oh, I know you're cheating on dad with like this guy. Like, what? Like, are you kidding me? Like that. I'd love to see this chaotic mess of like professional and personal life stuff all explode. Maybe we see a little bit more stuff about Gorman stuff. Like we saw that kind of reference with like the conversation with Saw and Luthen, and not so much with Mon Mothma this time in episode 8. But I think for both of these characters, it's going to be a lot more just personal stuff falling apart, and one of them will take it pretty well and internalize it. The other person will eventually cause this whole laser spinning ship stuff to happen.
I'm going the familial angle too with Mon Mothma. I think that's going to be the crux of her role in the next episode. We've just been building to it basically since the first scene we saw her in the show. There's going to be some type of fallout between her and her husband. There's hints of it every episode, but this episode had a lot of hints of their past, how they got together, why they're not a great couple, why they don't really see eye to eye. I'd love to see more Senate. I really want more Senate every episode, but I think I'm also struggling to see in this little prison arc where Mon Mothma's storyline is going to get big. I think her storyline might explode more towards 11 and 12 when the rest of the galaxy is exploding, and the Senate does seem a bit more important, and Palpatine is a bit more involved, and there needs to be some politics done. Right now, it's just like, oh, let's all talk and wine and dine each other to try to get each other votes. But really, does that matter? Ultimately, when Mon Mothma realizes that what she's doing isn't really working, that's when her role, I think, will grow. And Luthen, I would like to see a bit more backstory. We do have a couple shots of him that we haven't seen, and maybe he has some relatives off somewhere. Maybe he has somewhere or something he goes to be alone. I'd like to see some of that, because he's on the edge, and he's realizing, just like Mon, that he's going to have to take that step in order to get the results he wants. But is he going to be a coward, or will he do it? And I think this episode is where he's going to determine that he's going to do it, and he's going to take that step. I would like to see him stay away from Coruscant, though. As much as I think another meeting with Mon Mothma is inevitable for possibly this episode or the next one, I would very much like to see him do some things that are outside of that realm, because we've seen him so sheltered in his shop for a while. Like to see him branch out. Maybe it's part of his accruing all these things that he sells. Where does he get them? Who does he get them from? Is there some type of solace he goes to, or something he retreats into now that most of his stuff is falling apart? I don't know, but I would like to see a more personal side of Luthen. It finally came out in this episode. He was, in the first few episodes, so mysterious, and then in the last few, so absent, so closed off, and really his lack of presence in the show seems to be more about him trying to hide from the fact that he just caused this whole thing, rather than just a lack of screen time for him. But I now that he needs to get back involved, now that there's fears and action that needs to be taken, I would like to see him actually out there doing something. I think that's going to wrap it up, though, for episode 9, Predictions and Speculation. Thank you all so much for watching. As I said at the beginning, if you haven't yet, like the video and subscribe to our channel. We're on the road to 1,000 subs, almost at 1,000, less than 100 away. So if you haven't subscribed and you're watching this video, what are you doing? Subscribe right now. It'll really help us out with the YouTube algorithm, and it'll help us give you guys even better content here in the future. It's the best way to show us that you like our content. Comment below. Let us know what your predictions are for next week's episode. A lot of you guys have been giving us some really great in-depth thoughts. We always read your comments. We respond. So keep them coming. Let us know in the comments below. If you haven't checked out our other videos that I mentioned at the top, check those out. The Halloween special. We also have our review of episode 8 and our review of Tales of the Jedi. And stay tuned for Monday's video, our special Halloween episode of Legends Book Club. We'll be talking about Death Troopers. Thank you all so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.